Okay, guys, let's go through this webinar. I mean, it might not take the full hour, but let's see how far we get. I would like some interaction if you guys want to, because you can unmute yourself. Yes, Colin. Hello, Colin. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. You?
Amazing, man. Amazing. Loretta, you can unmute yourself as well. Yes, it will be an webinar, but definitely I want it to be a two-way conversation. Colin knows I like to talk, so it should be good. Thank you for making the time on a Friday evening. I would like to talk about much more of analytics culture and data-driven decision making in a business environment. This is not about product demo or anything like that. This is much more around what kind of an organization should one be looking for, and how do you today what we'll be covering is much more around how do you assess your current finance function and how do you talk towards a target operating model essentially. So that is what we will be focusing on today. For the agenda is quick introduction to myself, who I am, why are we here, and then I will be going through a background of a case study that we've delivered recently, and then how did we evaluate the finance function, how did we go towards a target setting of go, what does target operating model look like, what does good look like, and what was the outcome of the same at the end of that one. We have a follow up on this one in August where we will be covering much more around how did we go around doing it. Today we will touch upon the frameworks, but the next one is much more in depth, detail, and then next steps from there. So this is a two-part series for sure. So quick introductions. Uh, This is me. I have an MBA from University of Hertfordshire. I'm a CIMA qualified, basically chartered as well. I am a professionally qualified consultant as well as I'm an Anaplan modeler and a Power BI, Microsoft certified Power BI expert, and I'm a GCologist as well. And actually, I am going to talk about a little bit about GCologist as a part of the presentation as well, because there are different aspects, right, to finance that we should be looking at, not just about decision making and data. Where do I come from? What gives me the authority to have this conversation with you today? Uh, well, I have worked with some very big brand names over the years, and more importantly, I'd like to draw your attention on, the work that I did there. So for me, it's always not about, quantity of work. It's about what did you do. So even when we are assessing people, we talk about what actually was delivered by the individual. So I have been building analytical tools back in the day, even before Power BI or all these BI tools started coming up, essentially using Access and things like that. I've done, project-based budgeting and stuff like that. So that has been my focus all my career. After setting up Akshar Business Consulting, essentially these are the clients that we have served so far, built right from building appraisal models to delivering Power BI, Anaplan, and such like, delivering driver-based budgeting, delivering a little bit more of connected planning, combining, headcount planning along with your, purchase order or vendor management planning and things like that, just to make sure that a business comes together and is able to take better business decisions, essentially. So this is essentially where I come from with the models and experience that I bring to the table. So why are we here today, right? You have registered today here to essentially because you wanted to talk about analytical culture and data-driven decision making. Uh, so that means first it's about informed decision making. Coming up to bringing answers which have got not just gut feeling behind it, but actually data. One of my favorite phrases is, in God we trust. Everybody else needs to bring data. So that is the philosophy that we tend to basically work with, because that I think is important to allow all decisions to be based out of data rather than just experience. Uh, But one of the other things you get out of this thought process is also immediately improved efficiency and productivity. Anybody who's worked with any sort of tools, any sort of, transformation, they will know one of the immediate impacts will be efficiency and productivity. Uh, what people don't always realize is that you will get insights which you did not have before. Okay, plus you will get transparency and accountability, not just because management will be able to make people more accountable, but because people can see the data, they become much more self-disciplined and self-organized as well. It just helps. Okay, it also helps mitigate risk. We've had incidents where we've built stuff for people, for businesses, and we have suddenly been able to see that where the risk lies with certain customers or certain activities, and based on that they have made actually very different choices around it. So it's about you know making sure that your data is organized in a manner which helps you not only progress and identify opportunities but also mitigate risk. uh, it gives you a competitive advantage as well as helps you with agility and innovation. The reason I say that is because then business can make much very different choices, like right from expansion into a new country to extending current product lines into different countries or different markets. It just helps when you have organized data, then your decision making is a lot more sensible, which takes you much further along. uh, and everything is evidence based, and your whatever changes you make in the larger business scale or within your finance function, is all based on data, right? And business performance is then evaluated based on much more robust information, because how many times have we all come across, right, when we talk to the business, and the business is always asking us, can I trust the numbers? Does this number make sense? So having that data culture or the data-driven decision-making process in the business helps actually evaluate and create that faith and credibility across the business. Does this resonate with people? I mean, everybody have your mics are off, so you can all talk. If anybody wants to talk, you can unmute yourself and you can talk. Does this even resonate with people? Does this make sense? Is this what your experience has been? Have you had these challenges in the past, or anything anybody would like to share? Because I don't want to be the only person talking for 1 hour, to be honest. Yeah,
Yeah, looks good.
yep, cool. So what I will be walking with you guys today is a case study that we have delivered recently with a client. The case study was actually very, very straightforward, but you will see the side impacts as we go along. So what we were called in for was to build us a Power BI dashboard, make it simple. Our board deck takes 7 to 10 working days. We would like it to be much more automated. When we picked up the board deck, it was completely, literally a data dump, a whole lot of tables of financial numbers after financial numbers. Uh, some of the formulas of even on the KPIs were not even updated correctly, so there were clear errors in the board deck which was being put together as well. And when we started asking questions around, okay, who does this piece, or, how do you get to this number and things like that, nobody was even very clear on who does what. So roles and responsibilities were pretty chaotic, to be honest. Uh, and we were asked to automate it, which today everybody wants to do automation, machine learning, all that kind of stuff. Reduce the time to from month end close to the time they can provide a board deck, and they wanted a culture where they can have much more qualitative discussions outside the financials, uh, and implement some sort of KPIs which were much more correct and not manually did not need manual maintenance. So that was the ask essentially. So now let's see how we went around doing it. Okay. So this is the framework that we always use. We look at where the finance function is. Are they a bean counter? Are they a reporter? Are they an analyst, or are they a strategic partner? Okay, and the way we do that is across people, process, and technology. So yes, people can be, for example, analysts, but processes are still reporter, or and tech can be still be encounter behavior. So it can be all over the place. So you look at it like, horizontally and vertically to just make sure that you get a picture of where the current position is. And this is a framework in today's, if you remember when we started the agenda, that is what I was referring to, right? You need to look at where your current finance function lies in terms of these dimensions and that evolutionary journey of where they are. Uh, we look at people. First of all, we looked at the people that they had. Everybody was basically very Excel focused. They had the only skills that they had was Excel. So that was a bit of a challenge because we were looking to improve the technology stack as well. So only Excel was a bit challenging, but yes, at least they had a decent understanding of the numbers. A couple of people in their teams were just new into the business, so they didn't even have enough business acumen. So again, there were gaps on business acumen, there were gaps on technical skills, but analytical ability were okay, and they were most of them were qualified. So from that element, that was still manageable. Soft skills also is something which is very, very obviously important, and that is something we always look into whenever we go to a client as well, and we start working on a new project with a client. Do they have the right communication skills? Are they managing the project correctly? Are they going to be able to communicate and cross-sell this across the business, across their business correctly? And things like that. So that are two things, and these are things I think most people will look at us from a CV perspective, or when you go through an interview process. So this is reasonably straightforward. But what we do differently is we also talk about MBIT, and we also tend to do GC index. And this I think I will take a couple of minutes on it. The reason we do this is because essentially what we do is we look at what personality type they have. So, for example, when you look at MBIT helps basically people to for you to understand that how do they make decisions, how are they motivated, how do they like to be managed, how do they like to be communicated to, how do they like to communicate, and things like that. So that is much more around personality, which is your Myers-Briggs test. And that is what we checked with the finance team and all the immediate stakeholders that we were working with. uh, and then we also look at GC index, especially for the leadership team, because GC index is much more ideas focused, or basically task focused, and it gives you a nice little map, and it tells you basically whether people are like they they like innovative out of the box ideas, or are they much more grounded in reality? Okay, are they real detail oriented, or are they basically big picture oriented? Okay, so those are things, and that is where the GC index is, where I am a GCologist as well. So I'm a qualified certified GCologist. I can actually coach people on GC index. I can even offer a complimentary GC index if somebody wanted one, where you could do a online basically questionnaire, and then I could give you of half an hour to 45 minutes of walkthrough to understand, what actually motivates you. Because the biggest thing with GC index is it helps you understand what energizes you to have an impact. Okay, and now why is this important in this context? It is important because if you are trying to change the analytics culture or behavior in the business, yes, it's about technology, yes, it is about processes, but at the heart of it is it's about people. Okay, so if you don't have the right people supporting you through that process, then you are going to basically struggle to make change stick. Okay, that is the reason why we reach stats like 80 to 90% of finance transformations fail. I remember I had a very distinct conversation with a CFO of a train company up north, and his perspective was very clear that Tejas, we've implemented all tools, we have got all BI solutions, all CPM solutions, we've got everything there, but we can't still get our people to do more analytics or better business partnering. And that's where his problem is not soft skills or his technical skills, is attitude. It's about personality and energy for impact. That's what we then helped him with his team on. So we didn't do any of this. We didn't even implement any technology. We just focused on this, and we made sure he had the right people in the right roles for him to be able to actually deliver that analytical culture. Because yes, it's about getting all the technology to give you numbers, but somebody has to take that and do something with it, drive that decision making, and that will not happen if you don't have the right people. And hence, even today, I'm talking first about basically people, because people are critical for, for any transformation or any change. If you're looking to change culture, uh, so if I go back to the framework, right, from a people perspective, what we just covered, you need to check whether your people are spending time much more on historic reporting, which is what we found our client doing, or are they doing it with some level of KPIs? Are they driving behavior and what decision making is being done? Uh, or are they able to actually predict the future in terms of not being able to tell who is going to win the next football game, but it's much more around, okay, if we increase resources in this area, or if we cut this cost, or we reduce price by this much, what is going to be the impact on revenue or sales? And can they actually do that driver based budgeting and that forecasting to a very decent amount of accuracy? Can they do they really understand that level of business? That would be basically, where they would have become strategic partner. So it is important for, as finance leaders as well, for you to understand where in the chain does your basically finance team lie, and not just as a team, but as individuals, because you will find that because that's what we see with clients, and in the particular client that we started with as well, we found there are people who have a lot more behavior in this area, and then there are people who are, you know, much more focused on, as long as my numbers are right, I don't care, and they want to move on. So you need to be aware of what the composition of the team is and what the composition of the business structure is, in terms of what people are, where people are in their maturity journey as they go along as well. Okay. Uh, from there, if we move ahead, so what is next? What is important is basically processes, and the processes work in terms of people, technology, and organization. So people use technology, and that is how your entire business or your organization is structured. And this is what actually generates data day in and day out in the business. And that data is what the conversation today is. Right? That's the heart of this conversation today. That data can be used for performance management, for compliance and control, and for creating efficiency and effectiveness. And that is important for you as leaders of your business to understand that, okay, is this flow happening correctly? If people are not putting the right metrics or right data points into the technology system solutions that we have, if people have off book adjustments, which you see all the time, right, then that is a problem, because that is where then businesses start losing value, and then things will become much more manual. Uh, and that is why strong data governance is important, where you can identify the sources of data, who owns the data, the time when the data is updated, how much activity is needed for your data to be prepared correctly and ready for reporting or analytics. Okay, is it very laborious, or is it much more automated? Where in that journey are you? Okay, authority, who is responsible to ensure that the data is correct, or whether the data pull, if I want to pull more data points, who do I go and talk to? Is that all correctly documented somewhere? Do you really know, right? And then is that broken down further of, yes, I have got my data for my reporting correct, but then do I know the sub processes that are running which help create that data? Okay, is there a production schedule for that basically data pools which is correctly documented? Is there updates if I wanted to change something in that flow of information? Can I do that? Do I know how to do it? Do I have the right people documented for them to be able to do this? And then the other important piece is decision governance as well. So remember, this conversation is around data-driven decisions. So decision governance is also about, it's not just about who has a right to sign off what level of expenses. It's about in every decision in the business, are the key correct stakeholders on the table? Do they all have the right data in front of them for them to be able to take that decision? What is the data that they want? What are they looking for? And things like that. It is important to understand these things in terms of even decision governance, because if you don't have decision governance, then you will, not be able to provide the correct data. Because what data do I provide? It depends on who is taking the decision. What are they looking for? So I know decision governance is basically decision governance is not a very common topic, and that's not something which people really like to talk about. But it is very important for you to understand within your business environment how decisions are taken and how then you can build a data environment to support that decision making. That is the way to think about it uh, in terms of decision governance. Okay. Uh, so if we again go back to the same framework, right? We walk through people and we walk through basically process in terms of data governance as well as decision governance. So in your businesses, do you, data governance is something which I know a lot of people talk about, but are people aware of their decision governance within their businesses? I mean, everybody's mic has been unmuted, so you can actually all participate as you go along. Anybody any would like to share any thoughts or any questions on decision governance, data governance?
Yeah, I'll share a thought on that. I used to work in a company where a lot was done in Excel, and the salary information being not sort of governed, that became a controversial issue when certain people found out what different people were earning, because some people didn't think that that was appropriate. So yeah, very sensitive area, salaries.
Yeah, no, see, no, that is a part of data governance, right? So if you don't have data governance in place, then you will have these kind of issues where uh, people get shared information, and even those who think that you can password protect salary information. I can tell you with absolute surety, I know how to crack a password on Excel. I know Excel passwords are supposed to be non-crackable, but it is crackable because you don't need a password to crack Excel book. So it's things like that. It is important to have the data governance behavior around your processes, around your reporting. On the flip side, if I go back to the client and the business case that we are talking through, where we implemented Power BI, if you look at that one, we had data governance issues not only because we were getting inconsistent data on sales. We had metrics which were being measured in the Australia office, which were different to what was being measured in the UK office and what was being measured in the Middle East office. So you are talking the same KPI, but the definition of that KPI is different in each of the geographies. Now that becomes a problem because people think they're talking about the same KPI, but they're really not talking about the same KPI because it's calculated differently in different geographies. So that is also is an important part of data governance to make sure that you're maintaining common definitions, common ways of working, and things like that. It is important. Otherwise, you know, you cannot actually automate anything which is not documented. So all the talk even on LinkedIn that we hear, because I know a lot of the people were invited off LinkedIn, basically a lot of talk on machine learning and AI is what goes on. But reality is if your data is not organized, no AI, no ML is going to sort that data out. You need to get that foundation structure correct first. So in terms of a technology stack, this is one of my absolute favorite slides. Most people in most businesses, right? You have your CRM, you have your ERPs going across, you've got some sort of headcount or HR solution that that exist. You may have project management solutions, stock inventory management. You may have, customer service or customer support, vertical reporting systems and things like that. But this is what we see in most businesses. They all have those vertical systems. Problem is, if you notice, none of them horizontally talk to each other, and that is literally a nightmare. Because one of the most common things I think most people should be able to relate to is, how many times have you come across multiple customer names? Same customer has got LTD dot limited as a fully spelled out word. Somebody used CK, somebody will say Kelvin Klein. So, or, things like that. It is an absolute nightmare. It is a nightmare because there is no software integration across. Not your tech stack doesn't talk across to each other. So what we tend to recommend to people is much more of a tactical view, which goes basically use some sort of, Snowflake, your data lake, call it Azure, call it SQL, again, depending on the size of the business, the complexity of the business, size of your data, how many geographies, how many systems involved, all that kind of stuff. There are lots of solutions out there that can be implemented. But having some sort of a cloud-based data warehouse solution lake is ideal because it then starts creating that consistency across. Because this is where then even if your source systems have got different, for example, names for customers, you can start creating a common definition, common platforms, common, you know, uh, clean vendor name, clean customer name, things like that. Even have common chart of accounts. So if you've got multiple basically ERPs giving you data, then each of them will have their own chart of accounts. So bring it on a standardized chart of accounts, for example. So you can start doing things like that. Post which is where you then start talking BI and EPM or CPM solutioning, which means your actuals in real time or close to real time can start flowing into a source system where you can then start seeing, okay, I can see that, you know, in this month we had this many people in the warehouse, for example, and therefore my warehouse labor cost, variable labor cost in the warehouse this month is going to look like X, even before you get to the month end, right? It doesn't need to be always backward looking. You can look forward. You can see already what your numbers are going to be, for example. Uh, or you can look at your CRM data already and say, okay, these are deals which look like they got signed off. So what is the revenue expectation in this month versus next month or whatever else, right? Or if you're selling just a consignment base, then is that going to get shipped out? If I have my supply chain data in there as well, is this going to get shipped out in time? Is this going to get signed off for RevRec in time? You can actually start looking forward into the future of what your month end looks like before you get there. Okay. And then combine that with EPM, CPM, or in very simple words, basically some sort of a planning solution so that you can then start looking at driver-based budgeting of how my CRM is influencing my revenue in my ERP, how my headcount is influencing my labor cost, for example. Okay, how my supply chain logistics planning is impacting my ability to rev or things like that. Or my standardized what is my rent cost, flatten it out. I can already tell what my P&L for next few months is actually going to look like before even I get there. And when done correctly, this can actually start giving you next 3 to 6 months of pretty close to accurate, actually financial data, which people talk about rolling forecast, what if analysis, scenario planning, and things like that. I'd almost say connected planning is the father of all of that because you can then have your normal CRM update going on which are live or close to live being fed in there, and therefore you're basically you can start forecasting yourself into the future on close to real time. You could have a weekly forecast if you need it, and you didn't have to do any more extra work for it. That is a possibility. It is not. It's not. It's a stuff of dreams. So that is what your technology stack should look like when you start looking at your ERPs or your looking at software across the business, there has to be a larger view. And this is not an IT job. This is a joint effort across basically all the business functions and verticals for you to think about how to bring all the different data sources in the business together for a joint decision making, because that can then help with actually analytics driving performance, creating that influencing environment where you can all be honest to each other with this is where we are, and these are decisions we need to take together as a team for us to drive the business correctly. It is when the data comes together is when management can start coming together, and vice versa. When management comes together is when data starts coming together as well. Does that kind of make sense? Anybody?
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks, Colin. Uh, so with this particular customer, what we did is we basically moved them from completely being Excel-based technology to basically data visualization, essentially with Power BI, where we connected to the different source systems for them to be able to create their board deck and everything in a much more fast, efficient manner. We are now working with them to talk about performance management and budgeting solution if they want to go on to the next step of their journey. And maybe eventually they will start looking at combining external data sources as well, because remember, every business, yes, internally they need to be connected, but there are external sources in external data points which are impacting your business. One of our analysts, I remember, he basically modeled this out for a chicken farm, right? And we took basically the weather information coming into the system for him to be able to then forecast how much feed is needed for the chickens, how much water is needed for the chickens, and things like that. Because as weather patterns change, the feed changes, the water, the maturity, the speed at which the chickens mature changes, maintenance cost changes, and things like that. Even the radiator cost, running the radiator cost changes. So based on that, we modeled that out as well. So that is basically combining external data source information with your known assumptions within the business. But you can't do that there. And even if you do, it will be a one-off exercise. It's not sustainable. Whereas for it to be sustainable, you need to move along this journey. So these a very quick summary of this page, because this is what I had promised today that we will deliver, is in terms of assessing your current finance function and then looking at what your TOM or next target operating model, next step of your journey should be. It is to look at the mindset and the skill set and the attitude of the people in your business, to look at where they are. Everybody will be at different stages of journey, and then how do you move them along? That we will cover in next on 11th of August. How the processes in the business are. Is there data governance? Is there data security? Is it clear of roles and responsibilities and things like that? How decisions in your business is being taken place, so that you can build the right data governance environment to support that decision making. And then what technology is being used today for you to be able to mature your basically technology stack as you go along. And again, from Excel to data visualization is still progress. This is not going to happen overnight. Okay, anybody promising any business that okay, even if you're using Excel today, tomorrow you will become AI, AI and ML and all that kind of stuff tomorrow morning. It will not just happen. It doesn't stick. For one person to go on that journey individually overnight or in a very short span of time is possible. But for a whole business to have that journey, it needs to be a slow grunt of process and progression as they go along, for them to be able to actually become, a really data-driven culture and data-driven business, essentially. So what did happen with our client? If you remember, this was where we started. This is what the ask was. What we landed up delivering is basically we spoke to the stakeholders, we understood their requirements, what they are what was manual, what was being done, who was providing inputs and things like that. We identified key data sources. We identified, are there reliability? How often are they updated? How can we structure this better? We map the processes from end to end for them to be able to actually be able to see that, look, this is your process map. Now, if you don't provide the inputs in time, this is going to fall over. So it became actually much more easier for them to figure it out. We've obviously did Power BI, we did Excel connectors on top for them to actually then be able to do analytics in Excel, Power Pivots as well, because some of the teams did need the data back in Excel. We redesigned the dashboard to the board deck to not only be financial but actually be KPI focused. The KPIs are being calculated in Power BI, so there was no question of manual errors or missing a formula or missing to drag the formula down, or missing a cell or things like that. Straight for decision support, and the whole Power BI and the board deck was ready in literally 2 minutes. As soon as controllership turned around and said, "Okay, we have closed the books for the month, and system has been logged for the month of June, for example." As soon as they said that, within literally less than 2 minutes, the entire board deck in terms of graphs, numbers, tables, KPIs was all ready. And then time was actually being spent using Power Pivot and things like that to, and even localized dashboards, functional dashboards for them to then write commentary to provide value add analysis around it. Okay, and therefore time saving was delivered. Future focus, basically discussions were much more a part of the conversation rather than, is this number correct? Can I trust this number? Conversation. What was really funny though is they found actually missing invoices, because suddenly the data became so clear that they could see at client level, project number level, they could see by month what the revenue was, and they suddenly started realizing, but why did we not invoice this customer for last 2 months when we have done the work for them? Because they were much more project based. So they literally realized that the invoice basically schedules were off, and they were basically missing to invoice the customers. They literally found revenue, 1 million of revenue at the back of their pocket, which didn't exist before. Instant, payback of the whole project, whole cost of the project was recovered instantaneously. They also then started realizing that, okay, these projects which with customers are coming to an end, and the invoicing is going to start dying down. This customer account is trying to slow down. What do they need to do to reinvigorate that relationship? What do they need to do to start cross-selling other services to them? Customer level profitability, product line profitability were actually now part of conversation in terms of not the fixed cost, but at least contribution margins of customer contribution margin, your product line contribution margin. Does this make sense? What are the product lines we should be doing more with, and what should we be maybe reduce those product lines or let go of some customer accounts if we need to maintain profitability. So this was literally, if you notice, this was not even an ask, but it just happens when you do data basically management correctly, and you basically implement even from Excel to simple with data visualization. You have basically benefits which you may not have really actually thought about. Okay, so hence it is actually worth the journey to do it. What that got us? That got us this, right? We got this lovely review from the customer. It is on my LinkedIn profile as a part of my recommendations on LinkedIn, because he was really like, this is really fantastic. You have really changed the way we look at our business. And so we are now trying to work with him to see, whether he wants to do much more on CPM, some solutioning around it, because he sees the value of how data-driven decision making can actually help here his business overall and his finance function as a function itself. Next steps from here, we are doing a follow-up on this webinar. It is on 11th of August. It is about how do you plan for this journey. So now we know how do you assess your current finance function, your current business environment. So you know where you are today. But if you want to take your next steps, how do you take those next steps? How do you plan for that? How do you communicate that? How do you get stakeholder buy-in around it? Okay, and then how do you implement the change, and more importantly, how do you keep going on with it? Okay, because it's not a one-time event. I always say that transformation, there is a thing like finance transformation, it is evolution of finance. How do you constantly evolve as an individual, as a function, and as a team? That is important. So those are things that we will try to cover on 11th of August. At least we'll talk them through with some frameworks on 11th of August. It will be on a Friday evening. So hopefully, if you found this interesting, then we will see you there as well, and we can have some conversations around there. Uh, the link to the event, I think, was provided in the previous emails as well. If you need it again, it will be shared with this recording and the slide deck, so you can have it. Please do register. I would like to see a lot of you there to take this conversation further. Anybody, any thoughts, any questions? Because I was not going to keep you long for a Friday evening for sure. So,
Hi Tejas, am I audible?
yes, Anuj, you are very
Oh,
audible.
thank you so much. It's really interesting. We talk whole lot of things. We look at a lot of posts, but when it comes to sharing the information in much more curated way, that's something I really loved about. And one of the key takeaway from whole conversation, though everything seems really relevant to current scenario, but to me, one of the key takeaway is the way you described about the assessment of attitude, right? That's something which I really found unique, because I have been through a lot of books and study and involved in transformation project, but many time I think many time we just ignore this particular aspect, and that is what you say that things can go here and there once you move to certain path already.
Yeah, I
So
tell you, nobody in the transformation process is useless. It is about having the right people at the right points. So people who are detail oriented, I tend to like them in the UAT stage when they're testing stuff, while you need big picture people when you're starting a project. So it's about making sure you leverage your team correctly, Anuj.
So, so my question is here because I was just waiting for your wrap up so that I can ask the question. So my question is here: is there any specific framework? Because you talked about personality, you talked about GC index as well. Maybe next session I would be interested to look at the ground level framework. How you kick off this whole assessment process. That would be one of the point for me to be really part of your next conversation. But overall, I really like the framework. I think yes, start with small and then move to the larger impact. So yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and that is it, right? Anuj, thank you for bringing that up. It is about
Mm,
evolution. So start small.
yeah.
I really don't like when people say transformation, because nobody changes overnight. I don't change
Mm.
overnight. If I can't change overnight, how can a business change overnight, man?
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. So you have to evolve as a business as you go along. So that is, I think, what it is. If you find it useful, honestly, on a GC index or MBIT, especially the attitude pillar, if you want to talk, can we? I'll really be very happy to talk further. Reach out to me on LinkedIn or book me on Calendly, and I will be very happy to take you down actually that MBIT and GC index in a little bit more detail of how do you go about doing it, and more than that, what do you do with what you get out of it? It's not just
Absolutely.
about doing an assessment, right? Everybody does an assessment. And then
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
What do you do with it? That's important. As they say, the tools are only as good as the craftsman. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's yeah. So I am much more focused always in my career about, okay, so what? Simon Sinek, the
Yeah.
why. Why am I doing this? For me, that is very, very important. So if you want to talk about that a little bit more, please reach out to me on any of these channels. I will genuinely be happy to sit down. No obligation. Sit and have a chat. I like a chat, man. I love a
Yeah.
chat. So talk human to
Great.
human. we can have a chat and we can figure out, right? If it helps you in any way.
Yep,
I'll be very happy to
absolutely.
share some experience and some thoughts.
Thank you so much, Tejas. Please expect ping from me over the LinkedIn. Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I am very happy for that one.
sure.
Anybody else has any questions? Anything? That is exactly where we want to be as business partners, able to answer the so what next. Exactly. So that is it, right? So how do you answer the question of so what? Telling the business that you have basically a sales variance or I don't know, a profitability variance. So what? Okay, I really now hate when I see a PNL variance. I'm like, yeah, so what? You show me a PNL with variances, right? Dollar variance, percentage variance, oh my God, prior quarter variance, prior year variance. So what? What this particular client, the reason why we got a good review, right, is because we then worked with them to write even analysis of look at your revenue variance and then talk about what in your CRM can you see as opportunities next month or next quarter for you to cover this gap, or if you have overachieved, what is the risk that you have in the future? Talk so what, even in the board deck. And hence, even the board came back to them and they said, you know what, something has changed in your board deck. This looks too good. You are actually telling us what's going to happen in the future. And it's not that difficult. All we did is Power BI. It's not that complicated. It's just done correctly. And then drive that culture with it of how do you use that information? Not limited to financials only. I love financials. I'm a chartered, as I said myself. So it's not like I don't like financials. I love financials. But don't stop there. To me, now that I have come in my career, frankly speaking, in life, if I have to go back to this one, I'll go back. This is where business decisions are driven. People are looking at the CRM data and looking at, okay, I'm going to make this commission, so I need to achieve this close, otherwise I will have a problem. This is where the decisions are being made. Finance is actually coming at the end. Your month end is almost an after effect of the activities which have happened in the business. So you to really, in order to influence the business, it's not wait for the month end. It is to catch it before you get there. If that almost makes sense. So that's the way to look at it. That's the way you catch where the decisions are being made. That's the point. Anyway, I hope you had a good discussion on a Friday evening. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time on a Friday evening to talk to me. These are my channels. Please come and talk on LinkedIn or on Calendly. Visit the website and let me know if I can help you in any way. Even no obligation discussion, we can sit down and chat. I think some of the people on here know me anyway personally as well, and they know I love a chat. So please come and chat. It's always welcome. Cool. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you once again. Hope I see you in August. Thanks, guys.